Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. This video tutorial is a fun Halloween card featuring Bijou and the witch's hat stamps as she waits for Maggie the Witch to return from her mischievous adventures on Halloween night. I'll be also using the Sweet Poppy Watercolor Brushes to paint the witch's hat, so you can see how those work and how they look so beautiful. I hope you enjoy this fun video. So let's take a look at the supplies that we're going to be using today. We will use the Lavinia Multifarious Smooth and Supreme that I have cut down to 4 3/4 inches by 3.5 inches as our art card base. We will then frame the card just using basic white cardstock. This is cut to 5 inches by 3 3/4 inches. Then we will mount that onto our piece of color cardstock for our card base. This is an 8.5 by 11 inch cardstock that's been cut in half, and then I folded that piece in half. For our stamps today, we are going to use the Bijou stamp by Lavinia. This is LAV 798. We will use the Lavinia Witch's Hat. This one is LAV 733. For our branch on the tree, we will be using the tree branch LAV 506. And then for our branches around the edging, we will be using the fern branch LAV 578. I always call these pine branches because that's what they look like to me, but they are technically called a fern branch. We will also be using the Sweet Poppy Watercolor pens. This set comes with 24 different colors. This is set number 2, and I have pulled out some colors, purples and those kind of colors that we'll be using to color our witch's hat. We will also be using the Lavinia masking sheets. This is what they look like. That way we will have our background that we can do and cover up where the owl and the witch's hat is, so that we don't get our color over on that and muddle it too much before we put down our colors on that owl and the witch hat. We will also be using a circle mask today to create our moon. I always put a little piece of painter's tape on the back so that I can make sure it doesn't wiggle around when I'm doing my masking and creating the moon. For our basic ink, we're just going to be using VersaFine Clair Nocturne, which is the black ink. And for our colors of inks, we'll be using Distress inks. I have the Faded Jeans and the Chipped Sapphire that we will use on our background. And then on the owl, we will be using Brushed Corduroy, Vintage Photo, Black Soot, Aged Mahogany, and Seedless Preserves. I am also going to be using a stamping platform. With my stamping platform, you'll see that I have a sticky grid down. I don't like using magnets, so I have just taped it down to my stamping platform, so it makes it a whole lot easier to work with. We will be using some basic blending tools to add our background colors. And then for creating the painting on the owl, I'll just use some a paintbrush, and we'll use some water. It's a little bit hard to see, but I have kind of just a little mist kind of floating over the card in places. And for that, we're going to use the Pan Pastels. This is the titanium white. And we'll just use like a little cotton bud or Q-tip to apply that on lightly. I'm also going to be using a glitter pen. And it's very hard to see. I don't know if we can catch it with the camera, but I put that onto the branches just to kind of give the little look of the mist and water sparkling on the branches of our trees. I'm also going to create the clouds in the background. I've just taken a little piece of paper and torn that to look like clouds. And then when we're ready to put our card together, I'm just going to use an adhesive rolling adhesive tape here that will just roll on. You can use a paper glue if you'd like as well. All right, so let's get started working on our project. Okay, to start out, we're going to go ahead and take our stamping platform, and we're going to take our art card base and put that down onto our stamping platform. And let me move this stuff out of the way. I don't want to have it knocked off onto the floor. All right, so there we've got that down, and we're going to begin with the branch, and you can see how my branch is very well loved. We're going to place that somewhere just a little bit below the halfway point. And I'm probably going to go ahead and pull that over just a little bit this direction. Now I like to go ahead and put a little bit of piece of paper where my stamps overlap so I don't mess up my sticky grid. So I'm going to take this stamp and we'll ink it up with our VersaFine Clair. And we will stamp that down. I like to make sure that I apply good, even pressure across the whole stamp so I get a crisp, clean image. Alright, that looks really good. And then we are going to take the witch's hat and we're going to turn it upside down. And what we want to do is place it so that it looks like it is just resting on our branches. Kind of like it's just hanging in the tree, acting as a nest, more or less, for Bijou. All right, same thing, just ink up that hat real well. And I just kind of overshot that a little bit onto the side of my stamp. So what I'm going to do is grab a baby wipe. I like to keep those on hand. And I can just wipe up that little bit of excess ink that I got on the edge of my stamp. Alright, and then we will stamp that down. I'm actually going to go ahead and pick this up and move it over just so we can not have to worry about that point messing up the grid. Alright, and so now we have the branch and the witch's hat stamped down. We can remove our art card for the moment and move on to the next step. Now this is the part where what we're going to want to do is create our masks. So I'm going to grab my stamping sheets, and what we will do is stamp our images on a sheet of this. See, as you can see, you can use these over and over. I have actually saved quite a few of my images that I have used in the past, and I save all my scraps. I'm just going to pull out a scrap piece here because when I created our original example card, I went ahead and cut out my two pieces that I'm going to be using. So what you will do is you will stamp your image onto the paper side of the masking sheet, and you will see that each masking sheet comes with a clear back. Let's see if I can get this to come off so you can kind of see that. It'll be a little hard to see, but there is a clear backing sheet. That's what you will peel off and then stick your image down on over the piece that you've already stamped so that you can mask it out. And then you just cut it out. And again, like I said, the great thing about this is you can use them over and over again. You'll just peel this off, use it, and then stick it back onto its background sticky plastic piece. So what I want to do first is go ahead and take my hat, my witch's hat, which I have stamped down and cut out of my masking sheet paper. And then I'm just going to line it up over the top of my stamped piece to help me to mask it off. Didn't quite get that lined up. There we go. So once I have that down in place, I'm ready to go ahead and stamp Bijou. Now, what I like to do is go ahead and place just a little piece of paper over here just to make sure that when I stamp Bijou that I don't have anything like coming down here on the edge that I don't want to. Let's go ahead and pull our stamping platform back out. Put our card down. And then I'm going to line up Bijou where I want him to be, or her to be. I don't know if Bijou is a him or a her. I call it a her. To be coming out of the top of the hat. And like I said, I'm going to move that up just to make sure that my stamp doesn't get down into a place where I don't want it to be. I'm going to ink her up. And then do the stamping. Make sure we get a good image. And I might put just a little more ink on just to make sure, because it looks like the eyes, which is a little bit more of a solid area on the stamp. Just want to make sure I get a good dark image. There we go. And so now I'm going to go ahead and wipe off the stamp real quick before I remove it from the platform. Alright, and now we can remove this piece. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and leave the witch's hat down. But I am going to go ahead and lift this off the stamping platform. Set that aside once again. And now I'm going to take my Bijou that I did the same thing that I stamped onto the masking sheet. Remove that. And now I'm going to cover up Bijou. So now I've got the witch's hat masked out and Bijou masked out. And now I can begin to work on the background. Okay, so now we're going to work on our background. And I'm going to make a confession. If this looks a little different than what it was on the previous section, that's because design team members also make mistakes. I actually started working on the next segment of this demonstration, and I had forgotten to put my moon mask down. So I had to go back and get back to this point again. and recreate another card. So that just shows you that we do make mistakes. Alright, so now I'm going to take this piece of my moon mask, place it in the left hand corner up here, and then we will go ahead and begin working on our background. So here's the one I started. You can see I forgot the moon, and there are several things I could do on this one. I will be using him again. If you ever find yourself making that mistake, you can use a white ink with a mask that has a hole in it for your moon and use your white ink, or you can do a bokeh effect and remove some ink with say a baby wipe or something like that to get your moon. But anyway, we want to do this the way that I've laid it out, so let's move on and start working on our background. So we're going to go with the faded jeans first, and I'm going to take the faded jeans and I'm just going to apply it all over the entire surface of the card. I'm not going to try and get it to be real even. I don't mind if it has darker spots and lighter spots in it, because that looks a little bit more natural to me on the sky coloring. So as you're doing this, don't worry or get too hung up about it trying to be perfectly smooth, because like I said, I like the variations in the color to help give a little bit more realism. Okay, so now that we have got just kind of a base down, we're going to go back in now with our Chip Sapphire. And we're just going to randomly kind of put in some dark shades. Some dark places with that. And if you notice that I am using a paper towel in places to hold it down, one, it is because with the masking sheets, sometimes your ink will smear a little bit and get onto your fingers. So I don't want to get any of that smeared spots onto my card. So I am basically just covering it up with a paper towel or a piece of paper to avoid getting those spots on there. With the hat, it's a little more difficult to use it several times because of the very tiny pieces on the masking sheet that you cut out for the tip edges. So I might not get as many uses out of this particular mask. Alright, so as you can see, we're just going to kind of randomly put in some darker color. Give that little bit more of a nighttime effect and look. We don't mind having the lighter areas in there. Alright, let's see if we can't get just a little bit more of the dark color down here around the bottom. Alright, so I think I like the way that looks. As you can see, it just has the variations of the blues to bring that effect of light and dark, and especially with your moonlight. You're going to have shadows and that type of thing in your night sky. So now we can go ahead and remove our masks. So you can see how it looks like. Bijou is sitting down inside of the mask, of the witch's hat. We'll take off our moon mask. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our black soot and our torn piece of paper. And as you can see, that's what I was talking about with my hands. So I'm going to wipe those off very quickly with my baby wipe so that I don't smear ink that has gotten on my hands from the masks onto my card. So now what we want to do is take this piece of torn paper and we're going to create some cloud-like effects across our sky. We're going to use our black soot, and actually I think I will use just a little tiny dauber. I think that's the easiest thing because we don't necessarily want it to. If we use our brush, or use a brush, I think we'll get too much ink, too wide of a line. So I'm just going to do a little bit of clouds. That just gives it, whoops, where is it? There it is. That just gives it a little bit of a neat atmosphere. The clouds floating back behind. And we'll do a few down here underneath the branch as well, to get that effect. All right, so there now we've got our nice cloudy sky. So at this point in time, we can go ahead and start with working on putting our colors to the hat and to the owl. Okay, so I want to demonstrate how to use the Sweet Poppy Watercolor Fine Tip Brush Pens. This set, as I said before, has a lot of colors, got 24 colors in it. I have pulled out the colors that I want to use, but this is basically what the set looks like. I have pulled out some purples and the orange for his beak, for her beak. So we're going to start out with our very lightest purple color that we have, and we're just going to put down a solid base of the pen. Now the nice thing about this is that it's very fine tip. So you can get into small, tiny places very easily. You can also use the side when you've go into your bigger areas so that you get a nice broader stroke. And just like when we were doing the background, we don't care if this is all one solid even color because that's just going to help us with our shading. So let's finish putting in this first base color. With this, you don't have to be precise. Just get the ink down across the entire surface of your hat. Now, if you'd like to, you can go ahead and put a little bit of this color in your areas that you're going to be shading darker, because as you layer it on, you will get a little bit of a darker shade of the same color. But we are going to go in and put in some other darker colors to create our shading. But this just helps us to kind of get that shading process started. Okay. So now I'm going to take my next darker color of purple, and this is where I'm going to concentrate on getting the sides with a little bit of color to look like it's got some dimension. So I'm just going to kind of stroke some of those colors gently around the sides to create that image of some shadows. I'm going to do it on both sides, and the stamp does have a little bit of darker dots. You can kind of color along with where those dots are, because that helps to show also where the shading is. So we'll just give this a nice little touch of darker color. Alright, see, it's very simple. These pens are really wonderful because you can control them fairly easily, and like I said, it's got a very fine tip. And now we're going to take our darkest purple and just finish up. In this hat, it's got a few little pieces that kind of go around the hat. I'm going to go ahead and make those darker to start out with, just so that we can kind of see those as an additional little piece on the hat. And then I'm going to go ahead and go back in and add just a few more darker spots, just to give a little bit of that shading. Some a little bit under the branches so that it looks like we've got a little shadow kind of cast by the branch. And then where the folds look like they're going to be on our hat. And as I said, we're just randomly putting that in there to give that shadowing effect. I am going to go ahead and on the very top rim, I'm going to make that a little bit darker as well. That piece is very, very tiny, but these pens have such a wonderful fine tip that you are able to get into those very, very tiny little areas. Okay. So that looks pretty good, but I always like for the colors to blend really nicely and smoothly. This is has a little bit more contrast, which is fine this way, but I like to take my water pen that has no color in it. It just has water in it, and this actually set comes with two. It comes with a broad tip and with a fine tip. So it's got the water in there, and we can just make sure we got water coming down through the tip of that. And all I'm going to do is brush it gently across the entire surface. And what that's going to do is that's just going to blend my inks a little bit. And I'm just going to do it very lightly because I don't really want to remove a whole lot. But if it makes lighter spots, that just helps us with our light and shadow look on the entire design. So just a little bit of that water, and if you feel like you've got too much, wipe your pen off, and then you can do some more blending. But I just like to do that because to me then all the colors get softer and blend in together really, really nicely. And that's all we're going to do on the hat. It's very basic and very simple. So for Bijou, what I want to do is I want to use our inks, the distress inks. And the easiest way to do those is to just spritz a little water down here on your work surface. And we're going to start out with the brush corduroy because that's the little bit lighter color. And I'm just going to put a little bit down on my surface. Then I'm going to take my paintbrush, pick up a little bit of that water and some of the color. And then we're just going to go ahead and put a very nice light color base down over Bijou here. Just to get our base down. with the brush corduroy, I'm also going to go ahead and do around Bijou's eyes. Sometimes I will do a different color, but because I'm going to use some darker colors around the face and the feathers that are in the body, I'm going to go ahead and leave this color as the lighter shade that I put around the eyes. So we can go ahead and color that all in. So there we go, just a very, very light little base of the brush corduroy. Go ahead and wipe that up, and we'll move on to our next color, which is the Vintage Photo. Again, spritz some water down, take our Vintage Photo, put a little bit down on the surface. Same process. But with this, we're just going to put that little bit darker shade in a little bit more random spots. I am putting it around the eyes to help distinguish that area where we have the lighter brush corduroy down. That just gives a little bit of a dimension and depth around the eyes. And then I'm only just going to go in and dash a few little darker spots. So I have a mixture of lighter color feathers along with the darker color feathers. And you can just kind of play with that to see how much you want to put in there. If you want more darker feathers, that's fine. See if I can lift this up without the camera going too much out of focus so that you can kind of see where we've got the darker mixed in with the lighter on the feathers there. All right. So that just adds a little bit more dimension to our owl there. And now for the final color, I'm going to go ahead and use Aged Mahogany. This kind of has a little bit of a red tint to it. So I'm just going to add just a little bit of that tint to give a little bit of a different look in the feathers. And again, this is just going to be very randomly put in there. Probably in a few different spots than what I have the brown. Just to give a little bit of interest. Because I really don't want it to be all solid browns. I think the red adds just a little bit of a pop, I guess you might say. Alright, see if you can see that. It's a little hard to see, but once you see at the end, when I take a picture of the finished product, you'll see how the reds will kind of just give it that little bit of pop. So there, we've got our mahogany down. Now, I want his eyes to show a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and wipe off my brush. And I decided that I kind of like the purple of the Seedless Preserves because that kind of goes along with the hat. So I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the Seedless Preserves and just in this little outer rim on the eyes. So I still want to keep the little highlights, the whites on the actual eyes. I want to keep those white. But I think the purple really looks pretty for the eyes. And again, this may be a little hard to see as I'm doing it. So now we've got the purple in the eyes. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and put down our what I call pine leaves, which is the stamp is called the fern leaves. So we're going to go ahead and grab our stamping platform and see what we can do to get the branches on our card. So to put our branches on the card, we're going to go back to our stamping platform. Move some of these inks out of the way. Put our card back down, and then we are just basically going to start randomly placing the branches around and stamping them onto the card. So move that down just a little bit. So I'm going to start out, and I want this to kind of come down and look like it's kind of in front. So I'm going to have it slightly go over Bijou and over the moon. And I'm going to start just putting these all around the edge. So I went ahead and finished putting all the branches in around the edges off camera, so you didn't have to sit there and watch me take the time to put all of those in. And now we're down to the point where we're just going to add a little bit of sparkle with our glitter pen. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to go along the edges of my branches and just add a little tiny bit of the glitter from the pen, and this just is to kind of give it that look of the branches being a little bit wet in the mist. This is the Sakura Jelly Roll glitter pen that I'm using, and I really like these, and they don't show up that well on the camera when I'm doing it, but I will pick it up here and see if you can kind of see the way the sparkle goes onto the branches. And although it doesn't show up as well on the camera, when you see it in person, the glitter to me, the glitter pen just gives it just that little final kind of a touch that makes it have some punch to it. Alright, almost finished with our glitter pen. Okay, let's see if we can catch that sparkle there. There we go, just a little bit of sparkle there. Now if you'd like to, you can also go ahead and put just a little bit just on the very kind of top edge of the branches, because they're obviously going to catch just a little bit, just a touch or two. I don't think you would want a whole lot, and maybe just a little bit kind of along the brim of the hat. Give that little extra sparkle. And then the final thing that we're going to do is that we're going to add just a tiny little bit of mist. Now I have found, because I've just started using the pan pastels, that I can sometimes get a little heavy-handed. So I really try to just get a tiny little bit and just kind of gently brush it on with the Q-tip, cotton swab. Just kind of have it randomly float across. Mist up around the hat. Just a little bit. Maybe a tiny little bit of mist swirling around at the top a little. But like I said, be very, very careful because it is very easy to get a little bit too much. And if you feel like you've got a little bit too much, maybe just take a little bit of paper towel and just lightly wipe across it. And so now you've kind of got just a little bit of a mist kind of floating around. Alright, and there you go. It doesn't take a whole lot. And we are ready to go ahead and put our card together. You make sure that my pan pastel, because it is very fine and powdery, so make sure you got my lid back on there because we don't want to have that floating everywhere or spilling. So we are ready to go ahead and mount our card onto the frame. So I'm going to actually go ahead and wipe up. You can probably see I've got a little bit of that pan pastel that got on my work surface, so I really don't want that to smear everywhere. So we'll just wipe it up before we lay our card face down and start our process of putting the card together. And I'll just line that up. Actually, yeah, line that up. And then we will finish out the card by applying it to the card base. Get that centered. And there we go. There's our card with the little bit of sparkle and the mist. And that just makes a really, really cute little Halloween card. If you have a small enough little stamp and want to put Happy Halloween down in the bottom or somewhere on the card, you can always add that in. Or you can make an inside sentiment for your card. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you enjoy creating this Halloween card with Bijou. Remember to check out the delbellosdesigns.com website for more tutorials on the design team page. Have a great day.